volunteers to work the front desk.
Yes, I think Gail and Neff said they'd be willing to work 2 days a week. Either one work one day, one work the other day, or they'd split it 4 and 4.
So he was saying to help with our expenses of staffing it, that right now they've got Gail and Nefra that are offering to volunteer to work that visitor center and be the front line until we can hire a full-time person or whatever that would be. But it would only be for 2 days a week, so we would still be responsible for the staffing the rest of the time. And then they're still wanting us to pay our annual, I don't know if you call it subscription or whatever, for the volunteer deal for events. And essentially it's saying, you know, that deal that we have is they'll find a minimum of 4 volunteers for us, and that's helped us out in Race the Rails. That's the only situation since I've been here where that's been a benefit of what we're doing. So I guess the main difference here is that they're asking for 50% of the utilities. What that number is, I've not gotten a hard number back of it. Is that $100 a month? Is it $500 a month? What are those utility costs? So I think that's what they're kind of estimating right now, or
Right, yeah.
do you have
It varies, that's a problem, you know, we can give you a yearly total and give you an idea what it's gonna cost for 50%, half of it. So.
I guess I'll ask the board, in your guys' minds, because I think, you know, this conversation about splitting the utilities has been coming down the pipe. Is there a number in your head that is a deal breaker, or a number that you were thinking of that would either be a reasonable or a totally unreasonable monthly contribution for utilities? And if not, I don't mean to put you on the spot either. If that number's not there, then you don't have to make one up.
Kyle, I don't have a number in my head, but I would like to take a look at their bills and see if it's all electric or whether there's oil or what the heating source is. And we wouldn't necessarily, the phone, you know, I think we need to work that out, especially with the difficulties we're having right now with AT&T.
Right.
Where they're trying to convert everything to VoIP. So I would suggest that we ask Mr. Beecher to help us, because, you know, we need to have more details before we can really make an honest decision on this. This is all taxpayer money, and we need to make sure that we know what we're getting into. But, you know, mainly it was my feeling that we would remodel, we would provide a room for the chamber to have a room, and we would use the other area and have a branded marketing message so that people are trained who are in there, and we would allow them to use the White Pine Room or another room for their board meetings, basically.
Yeah, and
where we only have one event now that even could consider help, we're not putting on any other events.
Okay. So James, what do you think the best way to do? Because I still want to keep working towards this, and I also want to kick the can down the road for like another month. So I've met with Nefra and I've met with Gail. We went over a lot of details that they weren't aware about in the beginning that made them that much more supportive of this as a project. So I think they're still supportive. We're still on board with it, but I kind of want to wrap this thing up.
Right. So yeah, if they could get you just a list of their monthly expenses, we would be able to at least look at it and see if that's something that we would be able to do. I don't think we could do anything about that. Furthermore, if you look on the fourth paragraph, Turner Rec will assume all of their expenses with the building in regards to remodeling. And that much we've already kind of offered. And then in addition to any unforeseen expenses associated with the building, that I would absolutely, a lot of this is policy, and it's up to you guys if you want to do it or not, but that one clause I would absolutely advise against. We can't be making promises unless you want to buy the building outright to pay for any unforeseen expenses associated with the building. So I think it's also important to remember what we were willing to give up, and that is the remodeling itself, the providing the staff so they don't have to. Those are all significant things that we're offering in exchange for the rent. So I think having volunteer work a couple days and then trying to find somebody that's willing to work whatever the balance is that we want that staffed may create more of a difficulty in hiring that person. So it's just something to think about, given the dollar amount that we're probably going to be spending remodeling and staffing. I think the utilities is something that we want to think about whether that's really a reasonable exchange, or whether we would just want to pay them rent. If it's going to be, maybe that would be a solution. Is I guess what I'm trying to say, and maybe cheaper. But yeah, I mean this is it's less. This was less shocking than the offer to buy the building for $100,000, but I still think we have a little ways to go. So I think as a start, we can see what their bills are, and I can draft an amended lease agreement, essentially, that would include some of these things. We don't really, the way it's worded, the agenda item, I don't know that there's any action we really need to take right now, but maybe Kyle and myself and 2 board members can get together and think about what would make us comfortable. I can draft an amended agreement, send it back to them and see what kind of response they get after we know what their monthly bills are if they're talking about with the utilities. But the only thing that I would just really advise against is the unforeseen expenses associated with the building clause.
James, would it be premature to just go ahead and meet with Nefra and Gail and just try to, not that we're like having an official meeting to approve everything, but we're essentially, instead of writing a letter and then waiting and then having another letter written back, can we just sit at the table and figure this out?
Certainly, it could be me, you, and 1 other board member or 2 other board members, and I think that would be fine.
Okay.
I would propose that Ian is the representative, if Ian has time, he's the representative to the chamber. And I agree with.
I absolutely,
that would be great, because you've been in the discussions before, but definitely not anything unforeseen, because that could be plumbing, the roof, electrical, and so that needs to be scrapped. And so I would prefer that we want to go ahead with that because we want to have a Main Street presence.
Conflict.
Yep, definitely, I'm on board with Kyle's perspective. There's quite a bit to go back and forth on here that is taking way too long. I'm having Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy but backflashes right now, so let's sit down and figure this out quickly so we can get it done. I think that everybody wants to have it done, it's just a matter of details. I don't know if Wayne can hear me. I probably should have emailed you, Wayne, but the last email I've gotten from you was back in March, and I haven't been getting any notifications about when these executive meetings are held, and thus haven't been there. So maybe just reach out to me later and we'll get that fixed.
Because of coronavirus, we've had now, the last meeting was in March.
Okay, I don't know if you heard that, Ian, he said the last meeting was in March because of coronavirus.
Oh, I see.
So,
Well, that would make sense then.
Kyle, I'm, one of the points for me that's it's really important is that we have training for a consistent branded message. It's not what we think it is, but there's training for whomever is a volunteer. And then if they have volunteers and things happen to volunteers, that if they're doing 2 days of volunteers, it doesn't matter who they are, if they're trained, just that they have to fill them.
Okay. Yeah, and that's my big hook. I mean, those are the things that I'm not leaning on is I want to control the message, and I want to make sure that the doors are open for a consistent amount of time so that people know that that's the place that they can go to. You know, it's
Right.
it's not, you know, this place is open for a little bit, or you could go to the museum who's open for a little bit, or you can go around the corner, they've also got stuff. I wanted to, you know, have that consistency of hours of operation and messaging of whoever's behind that desk, they're saying the same thing.
Beautiful.
Well, I would like to commend Wayne because he stayed open during all of this, and where other places have been shut because we've had to. I really appreciate what he's done because he's fielded a lot of folks, plus he's also been a help for people filling out the census. So there's a lot of value with, you know, him being open.
Mhm. So,
Okay, we will move ahead with that, and then we'll move on to number 7, and that's discussion only from Kyle, sanitation and safety protocols at the Bristol Convention Center.
okay. Well, we are preparing for that day when we can have conventions again, and we are having people calling and either confirming at a later date that they're still planning on having their convention, the graduations for the prison, police force, they're still planning on going through, and the mine, of course, has all of their safety meetings. So I've been following all the CDC guideline recommendations leading into this, and I know things change rapidly with every, you know, governor's meeting, but we've been trying to keep up to date. Caroline, I appreciate everything that you sent over from the SBC and, you know, all this stuff. So we've compiled this, Nicole and I, and just try to figure out what the best plan of attack is to make sure that, you know, we're showing that we're for real about people's safety and we're building that confidence with our customers, which I think is the important thing. So what I sent to you guys is stuff that we do and we always do around events, and things that we have done since Corona to kind of up the ante a little bit. So I'll just kind of go through it. We shampoo the carpets frequently, and so since we've been closed, the carpets have been shampooed throughout the entire building. The chairs have their upholstery has all been shampooed and cleaned, and the metal frames of the chairs have all been bleached and washed down. The restrooms continuously are getting bleached and washed just because those do still get used with the office being open. And all of the tile floors in the back areas and stuff like that have been cleaned and bleached. There's been no activity since then, so you know, things like the kitchen countertops, the sink basins, all of that stuff, I mean, has gone over, and I think probably the second or third week that this was going on, all I could smell for a week was bleach in the building. So the only time that's actually, you're like, okay, this smells good, I like this. Did a little research. We did replace all of our HVAC filters and got HEPA filters, even though the stuff that I'm seeing coming out right now is that it's more important to focus on your surfaces as opposed to the air, just because of what they think, you know, how Corona spreads and stuff like that. So even though we did replace the filters, we're looking at UV germicidal filters that can either be put into the HVAC system or they can be placed and mobile into the individual rooms. And what that does is that sucks the air through a UV light. It kills all the germs and bacteria in the air, and then goes ahead and pushes it back out. It's great for allergens, dust, mold, as well as all of that. So we've been talking with a company about sanitation fogger, and this is something that blasts cleaning agents in a very, very fine mist out into the environment, and it settles on all of the surfaces, killing everything that's on there. They're great for small rooms. It would be a little bit more cumbersome for our big room. It would take multiple cycles to go through and clean everything. But there is the opportunity for like a handheld spot cleaning. So we're looking into that. It's the same company that has the UV germicidal filters as well. So just because that is a rather large investment, I mean, we're talking $5,000 to $7,000 for this equipment. We want to make sure that, you know, we're getting something that not just works, but is gonna be relevant for a while. I don't want to get something that the CDC all of a sudden comes out and says, well, you can't use that now because now this is the standard. So just making sure we do our due diligence. We've also purchased 4 touchless freestanding hand sanitizer stations. So those will be at the entries into the buildings. We'll also be able to move those around so that they could be at the entrance of the White Pine Room, at the entrance of a food station once we start, being able to do catering and stuff like that again. So those are mobile. They are on the way. The hand sanitizer itself is the hard part. I mean, that everybody's making it as fast